Hello and welcome back to Hell Fortress Cathedral Midnight, the Enochian Terror Transmissions podcast. I'm Val, and today we're doing something a little bit different. We are having a simulcast, is what I'm calling it anyway, with the Affinity Collective Action Broadcast, which is the podcast hosted by the Permaculture and Housing Cooperative in Ireland that I am a member of. So today, myself and another collective member, Mouse, are sitting down and we're talking about our recent purchase of 9.5 acres of land in Cavan. The process was like for doing that, why we think it's important that, those who can in our generation pool their resources and create communal projects like this, how we're planning on building up the land, what we're planning on turning it into, and a lot of talk about the potential problems and pitfalls of projects like these. So I hope you enjoy. I hope you get something out of it. And yeah. Okay. Welcome back after quite a hiatus to the Affinity Collective Action Broadcast. This is the start of our second season and the start of a lot of new exciting things for the Affinity Collective. This episode of the podcast is also being simulcasted on the Hell Fortress Cathedral Midnight, the Enochian Terror Transmissions, which is my personal podcast. I'm Val. I've been on the podcast before under a different name, in a different life.
Yeah. The before times.
The before times. And with me is
Mouse. I'm sure if you're a listener of the podcast, you're familiar with me before. I'm pretty frequent. If you're just jumping in at this stage, hello. I'm up here in Leitrim, which I know the land that we're getting is in Cavan, but we're renting a house quite close by to do it up, which is real exciting, and that's where I'm at currently.
Yeah, so we have basically, as the collective, reached the culmination of the last few years of work that we've all put in, scraping together money, pooling our resources, getting loans, robbing trains, all that kind of thing, secret Soviet gold deposits from deep within the earth.
Yeah, one or two cults.
Yeah, crossroads bargains with eldritch entities, and we finally managed to get ourselves a pretty substantial plot in Cavan, which we are planning to turn into something we all sort of think is very vital to have in the world these days. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, again, I know it's been forever. We still don't quite have it, but we are waiting on an email to just finalize the sale now. So we're extraordinarily close, and the hope is for it to be done. Well, I was hoping this week. It's getting to the end of the week, maybe next week. But the project that we're kind of aiming to do is, I guess a group of us were looking at the world and going, this is a sorry state of affairs. The way that people interact with each other has been very devoid of community. There's very little respect for one another within society. There's very little respect for ecology and the world that we exist in, are a part of, that isn't there for us to just use and abuse, but something that we are a part of. And we were like, we should do something about it. There's a lot of talk about creating better systems and better ways of life. And I guess the way I see it is we're a group of people that sat down and go, okay, well, we've only got limited resources, but we've got something. How do we do the best we can with what we've got,
Yes, and it is, I think we all sort of share this idea that it's very important. Projects like this, they're difficult. They're difficult to put together because money is difficult to come by, and something even more difficult to come by is trust. It's very difficult to get a large group and a large enough group of people with enough resources to come together and trust each other enough to put their resources together into this kind of thing. But the importance of this kind of project, especially in a place like Ireland, is that we've got lots of foreign interests and corporate interests and just political interests in buying up as much of this country as they can and exploiting it as much as they can, planting trees that grow quick and are able to be pulped for paper and whatever, that poison the landscape and damage biodiversity. And now we've got things like cryptocurrency mining facilities that the entire world is in danger of being strip mined for square footage for, and all manner of things that just do not serve the biosphere, do not serve the people, and whatever we can do to sort of take back the land into working class ownership is something, it's what we're trying to do, and I think I'd certainly like to see more of that, and we'd like to encourage more people to do that, and
Of course, yeah. I definitely agree, and I think the idea of Ireland's landscape being devastated in the names of like colonial industry, it's probably something that people are very familiar with here. Like Ireland was once a rainforest essentially, and is now known for having loads of green fields. But that's quite a recent state of affairs. Due to British colonialism on the island. So investing in trying to restore some of that, like ecology or biosphere, is a hyper important thing to be doing, and something that's very much at the base of our project. But also beyond that, I think we are living in a world where prospects for people of our generation, the generations after us, of living this kind of, I want to call it like the exported American dream style lifestyle of like having a house and a career and a marriage and stuff, doesn't really feel realistic. The levels of consumption needed to do that, one, is damaging the planet hugely, and two, there's such wealth inequality being established that even in, privileged Western countries, a lot of people aren't able to attain kind of like this dream. There doesn't seem to be as much moving up the kind of like ladder of wealth, so to speak,
Yes. And it is a bit reactionary on my part, and I don't take this reaction 100% seriously, but when I hear people, especially self-proclaimed activists of our generation who are sort of able-bodied and whatnot, talking about emigrating, it makes me sad, because it's going to be the same everywhere. Might be a little better, but it's not going to stay that way forever, and I feel like that a lot of people who are emigrating because they hate the state of the country, I empathize with them. This country sucks, but they're going in search of that dream. Now that's me making assumptions, but that's how the reactionary in me feels, that they're going in search of that dream and they're not going to find it. And I kind of wish that people would, reach out to us or start their own groups and dig their heels in and repivot their priorities. Not that I want anyone to join like a big cult or anything, but like there's a lot of work to be done. And when I hear people being like, I don't want to do that work, I want to run away, I get kind of sad, because there's less people to help.
Yeah, I mean, like, I kind of agree with you in some ways, but if I'm 100% honest, I disagree with you mostly in that statement.
I mean, I disagree with me too, but go ahead.
I think the actual resources for change, if we say, in terms of like people who are actively trying to like seek and better the world around them, in a revolutionary, and I don't mean necessarily guns and all that kind of manner, it's limited. Like, you know, there is a limited amount, and focusing groups of people into specific areas and stuff so that change can be enacted in those areas isn't necessarily a bad idea, which might feel like people moving away and stuff, but really it's, you know, a big part of that is finding a place where you can make a difference. If the infrastructure isn't there already to facilitate changes, like it takes, you know, a group of people to be pioneers in that area to really bring about change, which is a lot more difficult than joining a larger movement already underway. So I do agree that it's sad, but I also fully understand, you know, and I'm completely an internationalist at heart. Like our struggles are all the same struggles globally. You know, this is a world made up of you know, humans and other beings as well. But it's a world made up of humans, and each of our lives are important, and each struggle is interlinked to the next. You know, so. Yeah, I'm very sympathetic to people who do feel like they want to move somewhere where they can make a difference.
These are good points, but I do feel also that people in this country are quite ignorant of the movements that are happening. There are groups, there are activist groups, and you know, community action groups that are doing great work, but people just seem to want to ignore them. I don't know what the story is there. Like, whenever I post online about stuff that Katu's doing, or stuff that IRSP is doing, or stuff that any other of these groups that are doing, nobody cares. Nobody wants to hear about it. And yeah. I just wonder why that is. It's like, and these things these people are doing aren't like insanely dangerous. They're not running around with balaclavas and AK-47s. They're going around bringing spare clothes to homeless shelters. They're doing soup drives. They are patrolling bad neighborhoods and talking to kids who are causing trouble and making peace in their communities. I don't understand why there isn't more kind of interest from say the self-proclaimed hipstery socialist internet people who are always begging people to do something.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, I think you've hit a bit of a nail on the head. No, I've spent a lot of time around these groups though, and in, you know, in one way, yes, we export a lot of activists, but in a similar way, like, quite a few people do come and settle in Ireland too, and do get involved in these projects too. So there is somewhat of a nomadic international community that does get involved in these things, and I think there is a give and a take to that. But there is a large portion of people who certainly seem to like complaining about how things are getting done, rather than, you know, trying to go out there and do it, or be a part of something, or try and change something that they might not necessarily agree with completely, and guide it into a direction, you know, because really, if you're talking about, you know, socialism or leftist politics, like at this stage, we're all on the same side. I know that historically, divisions within left factions has resulted in them turning on each other and killing each other and stuff, and there's definitely something valid for that. But the division we see in the left at the moment is a little ridiculous, because we don't have any of the keys of power, even slightly, or influence, or, you know, we're so far down the pecking order. The only hope we have is to really stick together, I think, you know.
I highly agree with that. I mean, obviously there are insane, like, Nats balls and stuff like that who want to do horrible things to people, but yeah. Like, they're
small though.
And there are going to be, you are going to find horrible people everywhere you go. Like, I don't think, I don't know, the whole left unity thing is something that probably should have a whole conversation dedicated to it. And I'm not well read, or I don't have the energy enough to go into the theory of that. I just want to do what I can and associate with people who aren't gonna hurt me or my family, right?
Yeah, of course. And the other, this is one other thing that really annoys me about left division as well is if you look at a lot of leftist groups, it seems like they're all trying to get new members, but they're not trying to get new members from people outside of leftist groups. It feels like, you know, everyone's trying to like steal members from just other leftists, which ultimately I think doesn't contribute to change that much. You know,
It's kind of dorky.
It is very dorky. It's like we don't want anyone in our group if you haven't at least read, you know, the first volume of Capital, and you don't have an understanding of Maoism and all this kind of thing. It's like, well, this is ridiculous, you know? The world's bad for everyone. You know, we have to be asking ourselves is like, what do we want? But also, like, what do people around us want? Because if you open your if you open your ears, like no one's happy. It's not like people who aren't leftists are going around being like, what a great world we live in. Like, you know, we're all aware of the effects of climate change. You know, a lot of people are faced every day with the problems that come from wealth inequality. Like, let's stop trying to steal people off each other and let's work together to actually try and improve the conditions around us, you know?
Yeah, there are a lot of blocks when it comes to that, because I've been to a few meetings. I went to like a PBP meeting a couple of years ago, and it got completely hijacked by some conspiracy nut who went on and on and on about how Ireland needs to leave the EU, which isn't something I disagree with, like in principle. But the meeting was completely different. It was one person was talking about ceaselessly about how Ireland needs to leave the EU, and another person was talking ceaselessly about how do we get me elected. And I was trying to say stuff like, not that I was like I'm not trying to place myself as this like super smart person or whatever, but I was like, hey guys, so there's a big litter problem. Could we like maybe think about like putting together like a litter picking thing or like trying to figure? And they're like, elections, the EU, and it was very useful. Like the idea of reaching out to your community and putting things together like that and figuring out what the problems are. They're always offset by very loud people who aren't very coherent.
Mm-hmm.
So that is an issue.
I definitely think this is a thing. And also it's like you've got to meet people where it's at, you know? Like, look, you know, I'm a trans person, you're a trans person. You know, we believe in trans liberation. We want to live safely and stuff like that. But that doesn't mean you go around, you know, yelling at people necessarily that like who misgender you or something. A part of it is about meeting people where they're at and trying to like educate people on topics so that they understand better, so that they get to know people and they can humanize people and form kind of like bonds of mutual aid and community and stuff, like, you know, like if something is new on the ground, it takes a long time for people to adjust to it as well, like, you know. Even if it's not new, it can take people a long time to adjust to new ideas, you know. And it's always better to, in my opinion, it's better to, where you can, grow and construct like places for change, means of education and stuff like that, than it is to just kind of get angry at the world for not being better already, you know?
That exact thing is rewarded very heavily online.
Yeah,
so that could be very addictive. This came up yesterday in another podcast I did where we were talking about how people in like writing and publishing scenes cultivate this kind of anger and cruelty to get more views. It's just kind of like part of it gets you the likes and stuff. It gets people's interest. People love gossip. People love to be involved in gossip. But I think we're getting a bit sidetracked into all kinds of things. But yeah, so something I think we would be useful to talk honestly about is that together the Affinity Collective, we've achieved something pretty great. We've gotten this big piece of land, and I don't think any of like they're I don't want to speak for anyone else. I think between you and me, and maybe a couple of other people, life is so crazy right now with COVID and all the personal stuff that's going on, and just living in this kind of like dystopian world.
Yeah.
It's very hard to feel excited about that. It's very hard to feel like we've accomplished anything because there is so much work left to be done. There's so much of our time and resources are going to have to go into this thing, which is great, and I'm really looking forward to putting the work into it. But to see this milestone as an achievement and actually feel good about it, it's it feels a little difficult.
Well, I'm not actually sure I'm in the same boat. I'm definitely sympathetic to your boat, and I definitely got a lot of stuff going on in my life at the minute, which has maybe taken me back from kind of like planning and stuff more than I'd like. But I am really like super excited and feel like this is a milestone. Like I don't know if for those in the house with me at the minute, they can see me. I'm chomping at the bit, like, you know, like I'm staying up. I can't sleep. I'm watching YouTube videos about how to like build new things. I'm like planning on like how are we gonna like, you know, dig drainage ditches and stuff like that. So I don't know. I am super excited about
Well, that's
this.
good. I'm glad there were members of the collective that aren't like completely burnt out and are able to get excited about this. So, what are you? What kind of like? So, let's talk about the actual process of work, right? So we've started off. We've got essentially the land is like this 10-acre, 9.5-acre, like plot, which has a couple of acres at the top flat, couple of acres at the bottom flat, and in the middle is this big hill, and
Yeah.
it's got a little house on it that's in pretty good nick that we have to do up, but it seems like our first issue is that the bottom is very very sodden. Like you could easily get like fall up to your waist in like muddy water. And as a project where we're going to be building and we're going to be planting things and we're going to be moving tools around, obviously we need to be able to bring vehicles off the road. We need to be able to transport materials up to the top of the hill. But we are a permaculture project, so we need to minimize. This has been a lot. What we've been talking about a lot is we need to minimize the destruction of the environment that we're working in, but we also need to be able to work in it. So, how have we been sort of hashing that out?
Yeah, well, I mean, this is the hard thing. I'm not 100% sure we are a permaculture project. I was talking about this with another member. I'm not sure where the line is. We're definitely drawing as much from permaculture principles as we can. But I actually don't know if we should label ourselves like that. There is some members who are incredibly interested in it. I'm trying to do some more reading up. We're definitely ecologically focused and trying to do things in the most environmentally friendly way possible, for sure. And there is a balance to be struck between, you know, trying to be environmentally conscious and also having practical resources where we're living a life that's not from, you know, the Middle Ages essentially. And it is a hard one, you know. The truth is that you know the networks of consumption that we have in the modern world is there is a lot of contribution to environmental destruction involved in them. In terms of like building a track, we were talking about building a track in a car park, you know, and we're going to use, you know, a gravel track and stuff like that. But that does involve, you know, using gravel, which is mined in gravel pits and has quite a bad ecological effect. But if you compare, like we will have to have a way to park cars, which are also bad, and stuff like that on the land. So we don't really have a choice. We can look at the other options, where it's like we could put in a concrete or a paved or a tarmacadon road or parking space or whatever. But all of these options actually have a much higher environmental cost associated with them. So sometimes you are stuck between bad choices, you know? In fact,
Yeah.
I would say oftentimes. And
Well, it seems like. Go ahead.
yeah. No, and you just you just have to think about it and make a choice. Like, you know, like this is something that we will have to do. We might as well try and make an environmentally informed choice, but understand that ultimately it is a contribution to negatively to the ecology of somewhere, you know.
Yeah, which is where working within permaculture principles becomes useful, because we have to dig a car park. Cool. So we're going to do this like water barrier, and we're going to put in gravel. And the way that's going to work is it's going to give us like a decade or two of sustainability, rather than like something like tar macadam or concrete. Like that'll wear down really, really easy, especially tar macadam, and would have to be paved over like every year. And we're trying to we're trying to put it together in a way where we can increase the time frame where we have to take these things like mined gravel and whatnot and renew upon them. We're trying to minimize the amount of consumption that we need to just maintain the structure of our work area.
Yeah. Yeah, well, tarmacadon and concrete and stuff would actually last a long time, but are pretty detrimental straight away, and also don't allow water to travel through, which makes them kind of bad for the environment they're put into as well. I think that the argument, or not the argument, but the discussion we were talking about was kind of like weed barrier before, which is the idea there's you know, you put weed barrier under drives most of the time that's made out of plastic, and it prevents kind of like dirt and stuff mixing in with the gravel, which means the gravel will essentially become back to earth in a very short amount of time, whereas this barrier will hold it off for a much longer period. And that we had a lot of discussion about that. A few people are uncomfortable with putting kind of like plastic into the ground, but the alternative is that we would have to buy more gravel more frequently to try and repave this situation, as it was taken over by weeds who would die and become earth, and the earth was able to get up. So it is kind of like, you know, people might be uncomfortable with it, but it's kind of like the best of the situation, you know.
Yeah, and another element of that I think we're all very aware of is that wetlands of all kinds are very, very important for not just the Irish ecosystem, but every ecosystem. So we've got all this groundwater that is hindering us, but we need to be careful about our drainage, because we don't want to remove this region of an area where frogs could spawn, or certain microbes can breed and stuff like that. So we have to. We're going to, once we get this car park in, we need to worry about drainage, and if we're going to turn that into like create a water feature or a pond or something like that, and how we're going to keep that balance. Like, I think one of the most important things of this project is not only making this a kind of community area for humans, and an area where we can grow food, an area that can just be a nice place for people to go, because that is a very underappreciated amenity under capitalism, is just a nice place where people can hang out and feel like safe and okay. But it's not just for humans. We want to, like, I certainly personally, and I think a couple more members share this very specific goal, is that we want to not only sustain biomass and biodiversity, but increase it.
For sure, yeah. But I mean, there are. I think. I mean, again, I've been definitely talking about this with other members in the house where I'm staying, it's like there are ways in which, we can create the space that we need, which works in tandem with kind of like, a biosphere or of some variety, and also direct things into different ways. So it's like ponds are a great way to create kind of like wetlands and stuff like that. You can also create more marshy areas too that feed into this system, so that the water is not everywhere, so that there is land that we can use as humans, but also that we're not devastating the ecosystems for frogs and stuff around us. Now, another thing to keep in mind is a lot of the land around us is very good for frogs too. They certainly are not limited by boundaries in the way that humans are in terms of property ownership. But it would be nice to have plenty of different kind of like micro environments that encourage kind of like more wilderness to crop up. I think a really important part of the project, though, and something that I'm very excited about too, is it doesn't really just stop with this plot of land, though. Neither is the idea to carry on, and as money is being put into the project, to try and buy up more land, some of which, if not most of which, we don't know at this stage, is just used for rewilding, which is completely given back to just nature. You know?
That is definitely part of the grander plan. But I think one of the most important things we'd be taking from permaculture theory is the idea that even in some small sense, we really can't bank on on our surroundings being hospitable for life. We need to put put what we can into sustaining the local bioregion, because it's kind of a if not us who situation.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I completely agree. I'm just also, I think there's just a balance to be struck with creating kind of like a space which is good for us too. There are a lot of people who need resources in the world, and there's not a lot of people doing projects like this in Ireland. It's an exciting thing that we're doing. It's something that people will want to be a part of. Hopefully we'll see more, but we do need to take some space for ourselves. Now, obviously we want to do that in a way which has the least environmental impact, that works with nature instead of against nature, in an ecologically minded fashion. But there we will be displacing some animals.
Yes, there is a balance that has to be struck, and we need to do it with respect to ourselves and with respect to the non-human inhabitants of the property. Kind of like the two ends, the two like rubbish ends of the scale would be a suburb on one end and a shanty town on the other.
Mm-hmm. I don't really understand that.
Kind of like if we do it, if we take great care to make it the most comfortable and convenient place for humans, we're going to end up with a suburb. And if we just kind of build a kind of medieval shanty town that's being eaten by fungus, and we're up to our knees in water because we need to accommodate the snails inside the house and everything.
Yeah, no, there's definitely a balance, and like there's a lot of bright minds in the project. Like I myself have a degree in physics. I know other people have huge ranges of skills among loads of different things. I think with careful planning and execution, we can really create something which does kind of work in a way that benefits us and other things. It doesn't have to be all take and give. we're just gonna have to be smart about things and talk to people who are smarter than us about a lot of this stuff.
And and network with other projects like this. There are other projects like this going on in many parts of the world. There's a lot going on in like Portugal and that. So there's a lot of smart people who have kind of gotten further down the track that we can check in on. Now, an important aspect of this project is it being open and it being public and people coming in. So this has been a point of discussion, and we've been trying to work out frameworks and batting around ideas and dissecting concepts and things like that for how this kind of works. And I think this is an important aspect of all kinds of like leftist to anarchist and communist practice is being open to people but keeping people safe, more or less, right? Keeping people, making sure that the space doesn't become harmful or harmed, and that in practice is going to be a massive challenge, possibly even a bigger challenge than keeping than all the manual labor we have to do.
Yeah. I have my own opinions about this too, and especially as like a communal kind of like open space. Again, I think there's a balance to be struck. We live in a world where a lot of people will talk about inclusivity and safe spaces and stuff, but I don't actually think there's a lot of kind of like definitions or information given about what these things mean. And this is something I care obviously I can only give my own opinions. Something I care about really deeply is how we define ourselves and put ourselves out there to the world as something that we can agree on. Like being inclusive to me, like across the board, kind of excludes us from being a safe space. Now, it is a balance. That doesn't mean that we will tolerate people being absolute assholes, but in terms of like people feeling uncomfortable, people getting people's pronouns wrong is a very easy thing to do. Casual racism and stuff, we're not trying to like kick those people out necessarily as we're trying to educate them. Like, we are trying to be inclusive. We're trying to say no matter who you are, you're welcome. But the focus is on, education and improving each other rather than creating a community where this stuff doesn't happen. Because a safe space, if you were to ask me, is a space that has to only include, one identity, which are safe because everyone shares that identity. So people understand that position fully. But there's no way to understand like the struggles of an identity without belonging to it. So of course we're going to, and even then you can have issues, but of course there's going to be problems created down the line. I know that our statement of project principles kind of outlays that it's like the grounds are always shifting, and we are all doing our best. It's kind of our job to talk to people, to take people in, to call them out if we have to about kind of like people's behavior, but is mostly to trying to just improve ourselves. And being a part of this project, a huge part of it is coming in understanding that is a part of your job, is that you are there to work on yourself, because no one's perfect. I'm not perfect, I'm gonna fuck up and step on people's toes and cross boundaries and lines and stuff. But I hope that people would feel the ability to come and have a conversation with me. I've signed up for it by being a part of this. I think this is kind of like an important thing to define,
Yeah, we can't ignore the fact, though, that the entire group that we have right now are either white or white passing, right? And it's very easy to say this kind of stuff, but it's also equally easy if we slack, if we aren't proactive, that
Yeah,
we
I
could
agree.
easily let casual racism become more and more tolerable. We could find ourselves, like the queer people in the group, assimilate, like, who can assimilate, assimilating more and more as the people who can't assimilate are kind of edged out. Like that, things can go pretty badly if we're not very active about it. And I know you know this, but I just feel like I need to say that we cannot afford to be lax in when it comes to this kind of thing, because the assimilation by the dominant, the venomously racist and queerphobic and patriarchal dominant culture, which will face us as we bring people into the fold, is very, very easy. It is the path of least resistance.
It is, yeah. No, it 100% is, and it's very difficult to confront. And it's scary to confront. Nobody likes, nobody likes to be the one to be like, to talk to someone and be like, you kind of just crossed the line there, like no one enjoys that. It is something that we just have to work on as a community. It's something that we will be faced with, which is a challenge. And I don't know if we'll necessarily be successful. I don't even know what success necessarily would look like, because I think it's on a gradient. I think we just have to, like all commit to the idea, and then personally invest in making that a reality, and trying to check in on each other, and maybe have workshops and stuff together in order to try and keep us all on top of this thing. I
Yeah.
don't really see another way that it could work, though.
Yeah, because I think a big problem with how the modern world functions, and how our institutions are filled with predators, basically, is that people are afraid to be open with each other and talk to each other. They're made to be afraid to be open with each other and talk to each other and report when red flags come up, and when straight up horrible abuse happens. And institutions inherently gravitate towards being run entirely by predatory psychopaths. This is like this is
Yeah.
this seems like a big claim, like a big thing to say, but that's because our entire society is run by predatory psychopaths who want that to sound like a big claim to say, right?
Yeah. No,
It's
I actually completely agree.
so the what success looks like under capitalism is that you, especially collective success, is that you become an institution, and
Yeah.
institutions always gravitate towards being taken over by the worst of us. So
Yeah.
that is the great challenge that we have to every step of the way be a community, and the word community is being stripped of all meaning now,
Yeah.
because it has become like there's in consumerism and fandom and like all these different atomized identities that can people have on, like online. They call themselves communities when they're not.
Yeah.
They're like a pile of they're like a loosely connected network of cliques of like grifters,
Mhm.
who some of whom have each other's back and take part in like conspiracies of silence and ruthlessly attack each other. And you can see that like that obviously bleeds out into real life. Like we've heard a thousand horror stories about how badly things have gone in leftist projects and organizations and political
Yeah.
organizations and squats and businesses. And we need to be striving for real community, whatever that looks like nowadays.
I think that's true. I do think this is, and I do think it's also important to focus on positives as well, though. Like, you
Yeah.
know, like I think it's easy to catastrophize the things that can go wrong. That's not to say that we shouldn't try and prepare ourselves for it.
It's
But
just kind of how my mind works. Like
yeah,
I'm paranoid. Like I'm like literally paranoid. Like I struggle with paranoia and
yeah,
anxiety. So I am going to go there. Like that I all the positives
hmm
are they're kind of irrelevant to me personally. Like the way my mind works, it's kind of like we
hmm
do this work, we build these things, and I find it hard not to focus on the negatives because the negatives are what we have to deal with. Because I'm always in crisis mode. I'm always having to deal like thinking about what my next job is, right?
yeah, yeah. I mean, that's tough. I mean, I don't necessarily kind of think in the same way. I like, it's not that I don't, like, we should always be prepared for the things that can go wrong, but like there will be plenty of things that go wrong, and a lot of which we we can only react to, like, you know, like that's just gonna happen.
Another reason
I
I
yeah.
just kind of brought the conversation there is because I think that your average person on the street doesn't believe that projects can work like this for those reasons.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I guess, like, but I mean, for me, it's always about trying to do something better. Like, you know, we're not gonna hit, you know, like luxury communism, 15 people living on a plot of land. Like, you know, but what we can do is we can directly improve the lives of those around us. Like, you know, we can improve the lives of those 15 people. Like, you know, we can engage with our community and provide resources in a way. We can change people's minds about what they think, how they think the world can be run. Like,
Yeah,
you know,
as
it
go ahead.
yeah, at a fundamental level. It's like, I don't think that we're not going to have loads of problems. Some of those may even get bad enough that people have to leave, or will get kicked out or stuff like that. I do think that will happen down the line at some points. But we're trying our best to create something here which is, you know, a better way of modeling it. It's not perfect. It's never going to be perfect. Like, it doesn't even have a chance of coming close to perfect. But like, the takeaway is that the way that we've set up a co-op here can provide a way for people who are younger, who don't have the prospect of buying a big house to themselves, or maybe don't want to, and maybe you can get together with a group of friends to do the same. Maybe it'll teach people to be more sharing in the community, like, you know. uh,
Precisely. I think
yeah,
the more kind of opportunities there are in the world. How do I put this? Okay, so basically, one of the things that we want to do is create a public garden
mm-hmm,
where we're going to
yeah,
like grow food and stuff like that, and anyone can just come along and take it, right? And I
and
think
grow food themselves.
yes, exactly.
Yeah,
I think the more opportunities there are in the world for people to either treat something with respect or like abuse the shit out of it and ruin it, the better, because I think people by and large are going to treat them with respect.
yeah,
And I think that like you know, I do come from a place of paranoia and anxiety, but I am ultimately an optimist, and I really believe that
mm-hmm.
every carrot that we grow and eat is one less carrot that has to be bought from a plastic bag in a Lidl. And while I
Yeah,
don't think that the Affinity Collective is going to save the world by living on a 10-acre plot in Cavan, I
yeah.
think that if if 100 of these projects popped up in this country, that would be great. And if a
That would be
million of
significant change.
yes, and if a million of these projects popped up around Europe, we'd be getting somewhere.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. But you, like, someone has to pioneer these things, you know. Some people have to be the people that go to an area and be like, we're gonna do this. And I think that's kind of like, that's a large part of what drives me. It's like, when I look at this project and I'm like, am I gonna be a part of this forever? my actual honest reaction is probably not, but I want to be a part of it for now, for the foreseeable future. It's something that I feel really passionate about. I want it to exist, but maybe I have bad bones. Maybe I want to move to Mexico eventually.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, everyone working on this thing we'll get everything set up. Plant the trees. We'll make the structure. We'll build the huts and build the community center, and we'll live there for a while. And then our lives will go somewhere else. Like new opportunities will come up. Mm-hmm. Our passions will take us somewhere else, and then we'll leave it to other people. And maybe we'll come back, and maybe we'll start other ones. That is the anarchist dream. It's freedom. It's the ability to follow your passions and not be tethered to property or obligation like that. Although while taking responsibility seriously,
this is like music to my ears. This is exactly what I mean. And if these projects do crop up around the country like this, you can pick up and leave and go somewhere else in the country for a bit, work on them, exchange skills. It's not a cult. We're not looking to it's this is it. You live here now and you're not allowed to leave. It's ultimately you have the freedom to pick up and go. But if you want to be a part of something that's a little bit bigger than yourself, that's trying to put good into the world, open door, come on in,
And I think that might be a good place to leave it. We've hit about 50 minutes, and I think we've covered a lot of cool stuff. Is there anything else you want to talk about with regards to this project?
No, I think that's a nice place to leave it. I guess to sign out, I can just say thanks all for listening to this a little unorthodox podcast, the start of what we're calling Season 2. Of the Affinity Collective Action broadcast. Again, our website is affinitycollective.info. You can check us out there. We've just put up our statement of project principles and vision document if you want to give them a read, that go into detail about what we're trying to do and what we stand for. If you want to get in touch with us, our email is affinitycollective@protonmail.com. Feel free to pitch us podcast ideas, if you're interested in the project in any way, or if you're just lonely and want to chat during the pandemic. I check those emails a lot. So get in touch, and thanks for listening.
Yes, and this podcast will continue now in the second season with news about other similar projects and other leftist struggles going on in the world. And updates about the project and all manner of things, as well as my own podcast, Hell Fortress Cathedral Midnight, the Enochian Terror Transmissions, where I talk to artists of all different kinds and talk about creative processes and whatever takes our fancy, really. So, yeah.
Woohoo, check it out.
Yeah, see ya.